the contract are hard to find, and they can be pricey.
Wow.
So we were able to get one for a steal.
So I mean, I'm so confused right now because like, what is the what does an accountant need a box truck
what's
for?
happening? You don't know what's happening.
I don't know.
So my oldest son, who went and graduated from Dillard, he's 24 now. He decided after he went to Dillard and after messing around and doing some other things that he wanted to go get his CDL.
Okay.
And so he went to trucking school, got his CDL. And so me being the entrepreneur of sales, I said, well, if you're going to go get a CDL, you're not going to drive for anyone else. We're going to start a trucking company. So we started a trucking company about a year and a half ago, got a semi. So we have a semi. And then my son, unbeknownst to me, completed paperwork to get us set up with Amazon Relay. So now we have a semi and a box truck to move stuff with Amazon Relay. So, they move stuff from distribution centers to post offices. That's one of the routes that they need covered. And so the semi can back up to a trailer and pull the trailers to where they need to go. And then the box trucks can do the same thing.
Wow.
And so, yeah, it's great. So just trying to, make multiple streams of revenue.
That's awesome, man.
Yes.
No, that is super cool. Yeah. That's super cool.
And my son doesn't want to be a CPA. Doesn't want to be an accountant. Neither of my sons want to do it.
Yeah.
So got to do something.
Yeah. No, dude, that's awesome. And the fact that you're not trying to pressure them into being in the family business, right?
Absolutely.
It's like, hey, if this is not your thing, I want you to go do what your thing is.
Absolutely.
Not,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to pressure your kids into becoming an accountant. I mean, you gotta love numbers. You gotta love sitting at a computer and talking to the folks about finances and taxes. I mean, if you don't love it, you can't do what you're supposed to do that.
Yeah, yeah. No, because I would die, man. I would die.
You would die.
I am. It's funny because I've spent so much time trying to learn how to make money.
Yeah.
But managing the money, you want to talk about something that just flips off all my motivation real quick. It's like we talking about making a sale, like going and closing a big deal.
Yes.
I'm there. I was up till 4 a.m. working on a proposal last night. Like, yeah, I'll do that. But the moment you talk to me about okay, we need to set up we need to set up this thing and do this tax strategy and all this stuff. It's like, now granted, I'm probably getting ready to go through some pain. Y'all are working on my taxes right now. I'm getting ready to go through some pain when all this comes back, but and that will make me more interested.
I mean, everybody has their favorite part of the business. I mean, you're a rainmaker, so all bringing in the money is probably this is
that's
great.
My favorite part.
But the other stuff, maybe not so much.
Yeah,
that's why you employ a team.
That's right. That's exactly right. Yeah.
See, I'm not a creative. That's why I got you all.
Hey, that's the creative stuff, making the money, going out and closing deals and strategy work. Like those are the things that corporate strategy. I really, really love that stuff. But yeah, when they start talking to me about we're gonna get this card so we get the most points and all that stuff. It's like, yo, I'm not the guy.
Exactly. I'm gonna go to sleep or I'm gonna go somewhere else.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, yo, you got another sales call to put me on.
Right. Exactly. And I'm like, yes, let's get into it.
Yeah. All right. So I hope that was a good test. All right. Super excited to get to talk to my brother Eric today, man. Thanks for coming into the studio.
Absolutely. Glad to be here, man.
I think that there's a lot of stuff for us to cover. Obviously, there's some new LLC changes coming in 2024.
Yes.
But just in general, as a guy who spends so much of his time worrying about how to make money, I don't spend enough time worrying about how to keep the money.
Absolutely.
So you're an expert in how to keep the money.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Keep more of your money. Yes.
That's right.
Yes,
That's why we love guys like you. You help us to keep the money.
Yes. Yes.
So
absolutely.
Tell me a little bit about the changes that are coming in 2024.
So one of the big changes that's coming relates to what they call the Corporate Transparency Act. And basically, it's not just LLCs. It's any other types of reporting companies that are out there, could be in corporations and such. Basically, what has to happen is the government's trying to fight against money laundering. and corporate corruption and those kind of things where people are hiding behind in shell companies and such. So the requirement is January 1st, 2024. What has to happen is you have to report to the government who is the owner of your company and anybody that exercises substantial control over your business. That is a reporting requirement. There's going to be some time for businesses that are already in existence. Businesses that are set up after January 1st, 2024 will have 30 days to report. Yes. And if they don't report, there's going to be stiff penalties involved.
When you say stiff, like how stiff?
Significant. I think it's about, it could be 500 or more, it could be 10,000. I haven't quite, researched the penalty part, but I know they're significant.
Well, I don't want any penalties. So
yeah, nobody wants any penalties.
I don't want any penalties.
So this is really one of the reasons that this is a time, if you're in business, you don't have a tax professional that you're dealing with, you're going to need one.
Yeah.
You're not going to want to be involved with messing up these forms and having these penalties. You're going to want a tax professional involved.
No, that is one of the things that when I started, I knew you just have so much to worry about as a business owner. You have so much to worry about.
Exactly.
You're trying to grow the business, trying to keep the lights on.
Yes.
I have zero mental space for keeping track of any of that stuff.
That's a good word, mental space, because that's important.
It's not I don't have it. I don't have the mental space. Like I am primarily concerned with where is the next deal coming from, and essentially how am I going to fulfill, right? Like how am I going to sell, and how am I going to deliver what I sold?
Exactly.
And then when people start talking about, there's a new rule for the corporations where they're going to have to report on this and report on that. And I'm like, nope, tax due, I'm calling it.
Yeah, exactly.
Not me.
Exactly. But truly, that's really what you want. That is why you want a team of professionals. Similarly, we're here in the studio, right?
Right.
I don't know how to put podcasts and social media posts together, and so I engage professional because I don't need that in my headspace. It's the same way with you. You don't need that, but you need somebody to make sure that they cover that, and that's what we do for our clients.
That's right, man. I think there was a saying that there was a scene that was attributed to Henry Ford of somebody being in his office and basically quizzing him about all kinds of things, and he said, "You see this device here? I can push any one of these buttons and get an expert on anything that I need.
Yes.
So why would I know all of those things when I can just push this button
exactly
and ask what I need to ask?"
Exactly correct.
Yeah.
You can't be a jack of all trades and master of none.
Right. That's exactly right. So, is there going to be any sort of change to tax liability as a result of this new legislation?
That legislation specifically doesn't necessarily affect tax liability. Tax liability is really a result of filing status and expenses or revenue and an assortment of other things, but not necessarily the beneficial ownership. That does not play into whether you're going to owe or have to pay taxes.
So just basically, I need to watch out. If I happen to be involved in the mafia, I can't say whether I am or whether I'm not.
Right.
Forget about it. But
forget about it.
but if essentially it sounds like if you're just running a regular business that doesn't have any sort of crazy stuff going on, that you're in the clears. Who needs to be really watching out for this?
Well, anybody that's setting up businesses, that's the thing. So this is for. You decide you want to go in business tomorrow. You decide you're going to set up an LLC because they told you to do so on social media, or your tax professional told you to do that. You're going to need to be abreast of this rule. And that's the thing. See, I have multiple LLCs myself. My CPA firm, Level Up with Eric McGlothen is an LLC, E&M Trucking is an LLC, the payroll service is an LLC. I have multiple LLCs. Each one of those LLCs, there's going to be that beneficial ownership filing requirement. So you see how I named off all those LLCs? There's clients as well that I have, and you probably know people as well, that set up multiple businesses. Some are dormant, some are active. But if they are not administratively dissolved, if they're still active, you're going to need to make sure you fulfill the beneficial ownership requirement, or you're going to have a penalty.
Wow. So with your firm, how do you all handle that? When do you all handle that? Essentially, for somebody who's a client who has an LLC, is that something that you would proactively reach out to your clients and say, "Hey, we need to get this thing filed"? How does that work?
So that's a great question. So with the clients that are already on our books, that are already engaged with us, we will and are handling that requirement, for them. We are aware of it. We're making sure that they are aware of it, and we will handle it for them. So there's nothing for them to think about. But for those that are not engaged with us or not engaged with a tax professional at all, that's why I said they need to seek out some guidance. They really do.
Yeah, I would strongly agree with that. And I'm interested a little bit in, is this going to change in any way how income is reported, or are you going to have to change how you do that, or is that just all
well? So the way income was reported, at least for example, with an LLC, is based upon ownership, right? So there's those that you may have 5% ownership, 10% ownership. So the beneficial ownership doesn't change how that's reported. It simply says it really reports to the government how the ownership is structured. And from what I'm reading so far, is it's really concerned about really those that own more than 25% of a company. So if they're 5% owner, 10% owner, that may not come into purview. And again, what they're trying to combat is those that have these companies where they have other people out as the front man, but they're pulling the strings in the background. They're trying to combat against that shell companies where you've bought a company that might have been previously active, and because you want the aging of that entity because it's been around for so long, you take over that entity, but you don't advise the government that you are now the owner of that entity. Those kinds of things are what they're trying to combat. Money laundering is what they're trying to combat as well.
That's really interesting. I'm curious about has there been any sort of increase in that happening recently that's prompted this legislation? Do you know what led up to it?
I do not know necessarily what led up to it. I suspect part of it is, right, that there's this big issue. They talk about the tax gap, right? The gap in between what is actually collected versus what is owed versus what needs to be collected. So that kind of issue, right, makes it so that we need to start identifying who's behind what so we can make sure that we can know who to go after and make sure that they're paying their fair share.
Got it. Yeah, that makes all of this make sense. Are there, would there be potential benefits then to converting to a different structure? Does this cover all types of corporate entities?
It covers a variety of reporting entities, LLCs at the very least, and also incorporations as well. So whether you switch from one to the other, I think the only way, and I've got to research this, I think the only way to get around this, of course, is maybe if you operate as a sole proprietorship. But if you're going to be an LLC, which, it's kind of like pros and cons, right? If you're going to not use a corporate entity, well, then you're exposing yourself to liability. And is it worth it just not to have to deal with this reporting requirement? I'm sure there are folks that don't want people to know that they own a particular business. But what they've also said is this is a reporting to the government. This is not in turn going to be information that's going to be reported out to the public. So it's not public facing. It's really just facing towards providing information to the government, which people still may not be comfortable with, but they should take some solace in knowing that it's not going to be like, I'm not going to know, for example, who your beneficial owners are of your companies. It's the government that's going to know.
Got it. Are there any specific industry related implications to this?
No, but there are some industries that are excluded, and I will talk about that more in a future podcast. I do know, for example, one industry that's excluded from, for example, is accountants.
What? Oh man!
And I do not know why this is. So because all of this is fresh, so I'll have to research like why these certain industries are excluded. But accountants are one of the industries that are excluded from the reporting requirement.
How did y'all get that in the law, man? Did y'all have a secret counsel or something? How'd you do that?
I don't know. I've got to research more of this, but there are just certain trade lines. Yeah, they just don't have to abide by it.
Man, there's a lot of mafia accountants that made sure they got that little provision in the bill.
Exactly.
For thee and not for me.
Right. Exactly. So we'll have to see. I'll have to come do a part 2, and we'll talk about more like why these folks are excluded and talk about more details related to it.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. I'm just seeing it. I'm seeing it in a movie now. You're talking to some guy and you're like, "You're an accountant." He's like, "Yeah, I'm an accountant." Really though? Like,
right.
Yeah. You want to make something of it?
Exactly. But I will say also, when you set up companies with the IRS and even with the state, at least they usually ask a lot of times for those NAIC codes, and that's partly why too. They want to know what your business is, and I know people do a lot of different things under businesses, but generally, the business is supposed to be whatever that NAIC code is. You really shouldn't be mixing in businesses. That's just a side note. So
that is an interesting thing. I've only been exposed to the NAIC codes here within the last couple years, and I've had to look into some of that for getting the business certified in certain ways, and it is interesting that. You really have to figure out where, which boxes that you fit in. Now, I mean, there are tons and tons of NAIC codes.
There are.
You're probably going to find your box.
Exactly.
Do you recommend that people looking to start a new business look into what their NAIC codes would be before they go and file to start the LLC?
I don't know that I would say that, and also I don't do a lot of work with NAIC codes except for when I'm doing a return or setting up a company. So I don't necessarily have an opinion about whether or not they need to do a lot of research into that. The more important question is doing research into the industry that you're going into, because certain industries have certain requirements. For example, I would tell you I had a client in Texas who's an engineer by trade, and he was creating a new business, and he put the word engineer in his name, and that triggered the state of Texas to say, hey, if you're operating as an engineering firm, you've got to do X, Y, and Z. So he decided to pull the name and the word engineer out of his name.
Wow.
So, and it's the same way in Georgia, right? If I put, that I'm a certified public accountant, that triggers the fact that there's certain things that I've got to do. If I'm in the insurance industry and I put insurance in the name, that triggers certain things. So those are the things that you want to be cognizant and mindful of, as well as what the requirements are. For example, if you open a restaurant, right? May not be a big deal in terms of setting up the LLC, but if you're a restaurant, maybe you have to worry about sales tax, payroll taxes, dealing with tips, if you're selling liquor license. So those are the more important things, is you want to be well versed in what your industry is and what the requirements are, so you don't have to run afoul of those requirements.
Right. Wow. Yeah. And it is interesting that a lot of people don't get prepared for all of that. When you go to start your business, you're thinking about your dream. You're thinking about the possibility of the freedom of being a business owner and all of the things that can come with that. And a lot of times not thinking so much about all of these legal requirements and all that stuff.
Exactly.
Do you see a lot of your clients, kind of finding out about that for the first time when they're trying to file, or have you seen people kind of run into trouble with that stuff?
Well, there are certain things that I see that they run into, mainly from the tax side. Like when we start talking, like we'll run into the issue, for example, a good one is if you are a limited liability company, right, single or multi-member, not an S corp, then if you can't as an owner be on payroll yourself, you have to be either an S corp or a C corp, but LLCs, the owner cannot be on W-2 payroll. They have to pay themselves like as either, if you're a single member LLC, that defaults to a Schedule C and you're subject to self-employment tax. Or if you're in a partnership, you can get guaranteed payments, for example, but you cannot be on payroll. And I've seen that mistake a few times, and it causes problems.
Interesting. So is there a sort of a revenue threshold that you would say, like a taxable revenue threshold that you would say, okay, once you get to this point, you need to file as an S corp instead of a regular LLC?
Well, every situation is different, but in general, we say if you're making at least taxable income $50,000 or more in a year, then we want to consider it. But it's not just a revenue that we want to look at, because with an S corp comes other requirements. For example, the owner needs to be on payroll for what they call reasonable compensation. There's additional filing requirements because it's a separate return. The IRS typically wants you to have books and records, which a lot of people don't know. You're supposed to have books and records. That's the expectation. So those kinds of things, if you're not ready or open to doing those things, a lot of clients are not open always to putting themselves on payroll. They're not always open to having books. Heck, if you're not open to the fact that I'm going to have to pay an accountant now to file a separate return, then these are things you should not do.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, honestly, yeah. If you're making above a certain amount, I imagine, it winds up being worth the pain of dealing with that stuff, because you want to get rid of some of that tax liability.
That's exactly correct, and it's just one of the tools in our toolbox in terms of trying to minimize tax. But again, this is the reason why you want to have a consultation with a tax professional to know about these things. I cannot tell you how many clients I see, though, that have now making a lot of money and are still filing as single member LLCs, defaulting to the Schedule C and being subject to self-employment tax.
Man, yeah. Those last words that you said,
self-employment tax, it makes you cringe.
No. Oh, man. I think my blood pressure just went up.
Yeah.
Oh, man, that's rough.
It is, and for listeners that don't know what that is 15.3%. So that is when you work a 9 to 5. So I tell clients, when you get your paycheck, 7.65% is what you see on your pay stub that comes out, and then the employer pays the other half. When you are self-employed, you're responsible for both the employer and the employee piece, and that is up to Social Security is at least up to the base wage, which I forget what it is right now for 2023, it might be 140 or 120, I forget what it is, but it's subject up until that amount. You pay self-employment tax, Social Security, and then Medicare, you pay on whatever the amount is that you get paid from your self-employment income.
Man, whose idea was that? Whose idea was that?
Look, I mean, you got to fund Social Security, right? I mean, you got to fund if you want to retire. I mean, we hate taxes, but we're certainly going to be looking for that Social Security check when we retire.
I was looking at some of the charts. Social Security might not be around.
That's what they say.
When you and I are ready to retire.
I think. Yeah.
Oh yeah. It's very soon that it becomes insolvent. It might not be around for you and me.
Exactly.
I don't know.
Well, that's why you have retirement plans like 401ks. That's why we have options in dealing with life insurance, and those are the kind of things that we talk to clients about, so that you have, again, multiple streams of revenue, so to speak. So you can have money coming potentially from Social Security or your retirement, or from other sources.
Yeah, man. Yeah. This is great. I think that this is so informative. I know that I have learned a lot. So, Eric, you just came out with a new book.
Yes.
Talk to us about the book.
So the name of the book is Make Money Your Employee. And what I'm simply talking to folks about is actually learning and understanding that money should work for you, and not just you working for your money. So we are in business, we might have jobs, so we make some money. And so that money, some of that money should be put to work, whether it's in a savings account whether it's in the stock market, whether it's in a life insurance policy, real estate. I mean, there's a plethora of investments, another business, but our money should not simply sit and not being put to work. It needs to go to work so that we can be able to amass some type of wealth and also be able to amass some type of cushion. And so the book really is geared towards individuals that are may not be investing already, that don't have access or any type of real financial or investment acumen, just to let them know, look, if you're working at McDonald's, you can take $1 a week and start putting it to work. You're working at Walmart, you can take $5 a week and put it to work. So that's really who the book is geared towards. And my encouragement, my hope is that they will read the book, walk away from reading the book, understanding that I too can get started in investing. I don't have to have $100,000 or $50,000 and all those kinds of things. I can start with what I got, what's in my hand right now.
That's awesome. Yeah. That is awesome. Where can people find you online?
So ericmcglothen.com is where they can go right now to pre-order the book. The book should be out by the beginning of the year, and they can find out more about me there. I'm open to helping them. If they need some coaching, I can help with coaching. I have some podcasts. We're doing a podcast right now. We're trying to do that. So, and I can also help with taxes and also with other business consultation.
That's awesome. Well, I'm really looking forward to the book coming out. I will definitely be reading that myself.
Absolutely. Appreciate it.
And, man, just thank you for everything that you do out here and trying to help people become more financially literate, man.
I appreciate it, man. Appreciate the opportunity. It's been great.
Awesome.
Thanks, man.
My parents had an XJ6 back in the day, and we had no business having a Jaguar back in the day. We had no business having a Jaguar. But we had one. But we had it for some years, actually. We had it for some years. Now that I think about it, everything was cool up until I got into college. And, man, I just fell in love with Jags after that.
Yeah.
I fell in love with them.
You're a Jag man.
It was just, I want to tell you, it was like driving on a cloud. Like, I never got to drive the car myself. I think maybe I got to drive it myself like they let me drive it like one time. And not by myself. They were in the car.
Right.
But it's like driving on a cloud. I mean, it was amazing. And I fell in love with it. Decided recently, I was like, man, all right, so I'm paying like almost $500 a month. Probably if I include the insurance on my Honda Pilot, I'm paying about $500 a month. Bought it during the pandemic, so got stupid used car prices on it.
Yeah, that crazy. Yeah.
Oh gosh, man. Yeah. And I'm like, all right, I could buy this Jag and just put money into fixing it up. Like when I can fix it up, get it drivable, and put money in to fix it up when I can fix it up, and not have a car payment.
Right.
And I was like, I'm going to drop $6,000 a year on this Honda Pilot, whether it's working or not.
Right.
Because that I have to pay that in payments.
Pay it.
And that's not including maintenance.
Right.
So I'm like, I can buy this. I bought that Jag for like $3,600. Bought it for like $3,600. And I'm like, if I were to spend, as long as I spend less than $6,000 a year on this thing, I'm coming out on top.
Yeah.
And so I did it. Now, I underestimated the
amount of cost.
The amount of repairs that